your heart. Here's a not very difficult song. I'm going to focus on the Alison Moyet version from 1987, although of course it's a much older song, first appeared in 1945. Her version is a little bit camp, a little bit daft, but you know, I'm going to give it a go. I quite like it. We've got 4 beats in the bar, depending on how you count this, but I'm going to make this into 12/8. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and I'm going to break down each beat into 3. So we've got 12 little beatlets in our 4-beat bar. I should say before I forget, capo on the 3rd fret, because we're actually in the key of B flat, but if we play with the capo on the 3rd fret, we can play as if in G, and that suits the guitar pretty well. There's not really a guitar part on this. Obviously, it's a very much a piano-led arrangement that she has, but I'm going to try and get some of the character of that. And one of the things I want to do then is to sort out a picking pattern straight away for this 12/8. So on a chord of G, for instance, there's quite a bit of G in this song. I've got my picking fingers on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th strings. I might bring them up to the top 3 strings occasionally, but you know, with the capo here, it's already quite bright. So I've got my picking fingers initially on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th strings, and I'm going to pick like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's a single bar, little accent with the thumb, and then again with the 3rd finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or E minor would be exactly the same. There's a bar of E minor that follows this kind of thing. If we're playing a C chord, that would be with a thumb on the 5th string, and then for a D or a D7, well, I'm obliged to bring everything up to the top 4 strings for that. But that's the kind of thing I'm going to do. All right, look, there's an intro, a 2-bar intro that you heard at the beginning of the video. There's a fairly standard verse in 2 parts, and in her version at least, we just repeat the second half of the verse and we go into a coda with a slightly different ending. So let's crack on. I'm going to start with a verse, and then we'll come back and look at the intro in a little bit more detail. It's exactly the same as the ending as well. Okay, so in the verse we get a bar of G and a bar of E minor. Love letters straight, E minor, from your heart. Half a bar each of C, keep us so near, and D, while apart, landing on a bar of G. Okay, that's the first 4 bars. Now we get around the houses following the circle of fifths. I'm not alone. We go up to here. It's a bit high. I'm actually singing at the same pitch as Alison Moyet. Well done me, but she's got a fairly dark voice. It's a bit high for me. I'm going to start with this C sharp minor 7, flat 5. The melody's on a B. I'm not alone. To F7 in the night. To B minor. There's a whole bar of B minor. Then we get a similar thing 2 frets lower. When I can have all the love you write. Okay, that's that. As I say, it's a bit high. Let's have that with the picking. I'm not alone in the night. When I can have all the love you write. I think I got away with it. For the B minor 7 flat 5, with my little finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, I'm going to keep it there for the E7. That just gives me a bit of continuity. Anyway, that's that, and then we begin again, and initially the second half starts the same way. I memorize every line, E minor, and again 2 beats each of C and D. And I kiss the name to G that you sign. But what happens here is that we get set up with the G7 at the end of this bar, last 2 beats, to get us to C. It's a classic move in mid-century songs, but I'm not going to play that G7 there because I don't want to pick that top string unless I have to, and that's the note that makes the difference between G and G7. And lots of songs you'll see me do this, especially if I've got the capo up and it's a bit bright. I want to avoid playing that note up there just because it's a little bit tinny. So I'm actually going to add my little finger on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. I kiss the name that you signed. There it is there. Now it really does get too high. We get 2 beats each of C and C minor. And all in that I read again. You'll have to imagine that note. Right from the start. Okay, E diminished. You could play that a number of different ways, but I'm just using the top 4 strings, and that's the 2nd, 3rd, 2nd and 3rd frets. And then we finish off with G, but with D in the bass. Love letters straight to D from your heart. G for 2, and then D7 at the end to bring us back to another verse, or in the case of the Alison Moyet version, to the 2nd half of the verse. So let me see if I can get through the 2nd half all in one go. Excuse my voice. I memorize every line, and I kiss the name that you signed. Right from the start, the letter straight from your heart. And as I say, in her version, we just go and pick that up again from I memorize every line until we go to the coda, which we'll cover in a moment. But a couple of details before we do. As we move, and the 1st half and the 2nd half of the verse, you can do this. As we move from G to E minor, maybe throw in a passing bass note, 2nd fret of the 6th string, so you'll get this. I memorize every line. I'm doing that in the 4th beat somewhere. I memorize every line. The last little triplet 8th there. You can do that going in from E minor to C as well if you're not sure about passing bass notes. I do have a lovely video on that, but whenever you've got a chord where the roots are a 3rd apart, it's very tempting to add that stepwise bass note. That's open 4th string right before we hit the C, and that way we get a little stepwise descending bass line. The other thing to say is that in the original we get boom, 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 a really strong bass line, octave in the left hand, octaves in the left hand of the piano, but also the bass plays this, and that's on the E diminished, which is difficult to do. As I say, we've got the capo on, but let me see if I can get that kind of thing. And darling, then I read again, right from the start. Down to that D there. It's a bit pathetic. Ding, 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 ding. Doing it there, but you could do it on the bottom string. And that just takes us G, F sharp, E, and then to the D on the open 4th string. That's the best I can do with that. And darling, then I read again, right from the start. Love letters straight from your heart. Okay, let's go back now and look at the intro, which has an effect on what happens with the outro too. Now for the intro and the outro, I'm actually not going to pick in 12/8 as I was, because there's too much going on. I'm going to have a beat of G, so 1 and I'm picking with my 2nd, 3rd and 4th strings and the bottom string there all together, but I'm not finger picking the pattern. And then on the 2nd beat, I'm going to play that G again, and then A minor 7, and then G over B. You see me doing this a lot if I'm transitioning between G and C. It's just a kind of classic move. That goes up to C. So it would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and up to the C. And then on the 4th beat, E diminished. And in the 2nd bar, there's only 2 bars to the intro, we're going to have G over D. La-di-da-da-da-da. G, and there's a kind of gospel-y barroom kind of break there between the G over D to G. So let's look at that briefly. It's going to be like this. Open fourth and second. I got my first and second one. You can see the tab. First and second fingers. Off again. And now I'm going to play this. Those same fingers now on the third and fifth strings at the third and fourth frets. And on the second and third frets. And then onto the G. That's how I'm going to do that. So the whole of the intro. Right before we get into the verse, there's one of those. G with C inside it, so C over G. Love letters stray from your heart, and we're off. Okay, so having looked at the intro, let's now tack that onto the end of the repeated bit of the second half of the verse. We got as far, if you remember, love letters straight from your heart. Now we go back. G. I memorize every line. I guess the name that you sign, and then I read again right from the start. Love letters straight from your... So far so good. The first time round we just went to G here, but now we're going to go to E minor. Love letters straight from your heart to A7, and then back to the original ending. Love letters straight, and we finish with an outro that's exactly like the intro. Love letters straight from your heart. There's lots of plink on the piano. I want to get more of that in, but really that's a lot to do. Okay, that's a bit of fun. That was really everything. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it made sense. Thanks ever so much for watching, and hopefully see you on the next one. In the meantime, I'm going to have a playthrough of the whole thing. 3 and a 4 and a. From your heart, keep us so near but apart, I'm not alone in the night. Every line, I guess the name that you sign, and then I read again right from the start. From your heart, I memorize every line. that's more or less it.